I always thought I would recognize evil when it arrived. I thought it would come with voice, form, violence, blasphemy, like the other times, like something that imposes itself, something that enters. But this time, it wasn't like that. This time, it began with a word I knew and suddenly could no longer remember. Then came another, then a name, then an entire prayer vanished from my mind in the middle of a sentence, as if someone had ripped the thought away before it had finished existing. At first, I called it exhaustion, trauma, sleep deprivation, anything except what it really was. Until the morning I looked at my own hand and, for 3 seconds that lasted far too long, I wasn't sure it was still mine. That was the day I understood the most terrible truth of all the doors I have crossed so far. Belial does not want my body. Belial wants the space that remains when I stop existing on the inside, and the worst part is that he does not need to kill me to achieve that. He just needs to be patient. The first proof that I was no longer whole did not come in the mirror. It came in the street. I was on my way home when I saw, on the other side of the avenue, a man crossing while the signal was red. He walked the way I walk, slightly hunched shoulders, left hand in his pocket, head down like someone trying not to draw attention. It took me a few seconds to understand what I was seeing. It was me, not someone who looked like me, not a quick illusion. It was me, the same clothes, the same face, the same way of walking. I stopped on the sidewalk, unable to breathe. When that version lifted its head for a moment, I was certain. There was no possible mistake, but the most terrible part wasn't seeing my own face walking without me. It was realizing that when I tried to call out to him, he did not hear me, and no one around seemed to notice that now there were 2 of me, or maybe only 1, and maybe I was no longer the right one. And damn, guys, that opening already twists your stomach, doesn't it? If you've ever felt that chill just from imagining seeing yourself walking down the street, go ahead and leave your like down below and subscribe to the channel. Turn on the bell too, because here horror doesn't warn you when it's coming, and you won't want to miss how Daniel's story unfolds. At first, it wasn't fear, it was silence. A kind of silence that doesn't come from the environment, but from inside. Like when you're about to say something simple, a common word, and it just isn't there. It isn't hidden, it isn't confused, it just stopped existing. The first time it happened, I was talking to myself, trying to organize what I had lived through in the other doors. This isn't, and I couldn't finish the sentence. The word real disappeared. I stood in the middle of the room, repeating the beginning of the sentence, as if insisting would bring the rest back. But it didn't return. And the strangest part was not forgetting. It was the feeling that that word had never been part of me. In the following days, others started disappearing too. First words, then names, then small memories. Useless things, like where I had left my keys or what I had eaten hours earlier. But it didn't stop there. I began to lose entire thoughts. I would start an idea, and in the middle of it, something would cut the process off. It wasn't distraction. It wasn't exhaustion. It was as if someone was intercepting it, as if the thought had no permission to keep existing. That was when I noticed the pattern. It wasn't random. Everything I lost had one thing in common. It was mine. My memories, my references, my words. Nothing external disappeared. The world remained intact. It was only me who was becoming incomplete. I started testing. I grabbed a notebook and wrote a list of simple words. My name, my parents' names, places where I grew up. Sentences I knew by heart. I came back hours later. Some words were still there. Others made no sense. I recognized the handwriting, but I did not recognize the meaning. It was like looking at a foreign language and knowing, rationally, that you yourself had written it, but being unable to understand it. That was the moment fear began to take shape. Because forgetting is one thing, but not recognizing what you yourself wrote, that is something entirely different. On the third night, the body began to follow. My right hand stayed suspended in the air for a few seconds while I was trying to grab a glass. Not frozen, not paralyzed, just without command. I looked at it and knew what I wanted to do. The command existed, the intention was there, but something in between would not let it reach. As if there were a space between me and my own body, and that space was being occupied. That was when I understood. This was not possession. Nothing was trying to enter me. It was worse, much worse. Something was taking over, with absurd patience. Everything I stopped occupying, every forgotten word, every erased memory, every failed movement. It was not loss. It was replacement. And that night, for the first time, I felt that clearly. I thought a complete sentence. I need to get out of here. And before I could move, the sentence changed. Not in my mouth, in my mind. You are not going to. I did not think that. But it was inside me, in the same place where just a few seconds earlier, I had still existed whole. I did not turn to faith by choice. It was desperation. After what had started happening inside me, anything that could still connect me to something greater seemed necessary. Not because of belief, because of survival. I grew up hearing prayers. I was never truly religious, but I knew enough to try. That night, I knelt beside the bed, and I began. Our Father, who art. The sentence jammed, not in memory, not like before. It jammed in my throat. I knew what came next. I knew every word, but when I tried to continue, something inside me simply blocked it, as if the prayer had been intercepted before it could come out. I tried again, more slowly. Our Father, who art in heaven. Silence. There was no mistake. There was no forgetting. There was a barrier. I took a deep breath, trying to ignore the feeling of pressure that began to grow in my chest. I switched prayers. I tried something simpler. God. The word would not come out. My mouth opened, my tongue moved, but no sound came. That was when I felt, for the first time, something that was not fear. It was rejection, not mine. Something inside me was refusing that. I stood up immediately. I went to the computer. I searched compulsively, typing in a rush, as if finding an explanation would give me control. That was where I found the name for the first time in a clear way. Belial. Not as a generic myth, not as just any demon, but as a very specific description repeated in ancient texts, fragments, and forgotten theological interpretations. The one who separates man from God. I kept reading Deuteronomy, Dead Sea Scrolls, apocryphal writings. In all of them, one trait kept repeating itself. Belial does not corrupt through temptation. Belial does not possess through force. Belial cuts. He cuts the connection. He cuts the faith. He cuts the ability to access anything that stands above man. I went back to the bed, sat down, breathed, and tried once more. Not a full prayer, just one word. Amen. My vision darkened for a second. I did not black out, but I felt as though something had pressed my consciousness backward, as if I had been pushed inward, deeper into myself. And then, an absurd certainty took shape, not as a thought, as direct understanding. I was not being prevented from speaking to God. I was being disconnected, like a cord being slowly pulled from an outlet. Without pain, without noise, without resistance, just absence. I raised my eyes, and for the first time since all of this began, I felt nothing. No presence, no weight, no gaze, nothing. And that was when I understood what the old monk meant. The problem was not that something was with me. It was that something had managed to do the impossible. Nothing else was. It's too bizarre to imagine being disconnected from your own faith, right? What would you do if the words simply stopped coming out? Comment down below what you think about this cleansing Belial is doing to Daniel. I really want to read your theories. I went back to the monastery because I had nowhere else to go. If there was any place that could still understand what was happening to me, it was that one. Or at least, understand enough to name it. The road there felt longer than before, not physically, but empty. The signs were in the right places, the curves were the same, but there was something strange in the way I moved along that path, as if I were crossing a place that no longer reacted to my presence. When I arrived, the first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the ordinary silence of an isolated place. It was a silence refused, as if any sound that tried to exist there were immediately muffled before it could take shape. The gate was open. That had never happened before. I crossed slowly. The courtyard was empty. No monks, no movement, no sound of footsteps, of prayer, of life. Only the wind, which made no sound. I went inside. The interior of the monastery felt smaller. Not smaller in size, but compressed. The walls seemed closer, the corridors narrower, the air heavier. I walked through the same paths that had once meant something. Now, they meant nothing. It was in the main corridor that I saw the first one, a monk, standing still, back turned, motionless. I called out. No response. I took a few steps toward him. When I got close enough to touch his shoulder, he moved. He did not turn his body, only his head. Slowly, too slowly, his eyes stopped on me, and for a second that lasted longer than it should have. He did not recognize me. It was not doubt. It was not confusion. It was a total absence of reference, as if I did not exist within his field of perception. "I have been here before," I said. My voice sounded strange in that place. He blinked once and then spoke. Some still managed to see. The sentence came out dry, without emotion, without intonation, like a diagnosis. "I need to speak to someone," I said. "To anyone." He took a few seconds to answer, as if deciding whether that made sense. "Almost no one speaks anymore," he said. "Why?" He tilted his head slightly. "Because speaking still keeps you here." The weight of that sentence remained in the air, or maybe it didn't. Maybe it was just one more thing that had started to disappear. "And Hartman?" I asked. The name sounded wrong, as if it no longer belonged to that place. The monk looked away. "He tried to name what cannot be named," he said. "And he was forgotten before he died." I fell silent, not by choice, but because something inside me did not respond. Then he stepped closer, slowly, very close, too close, and spoke in a low voice, for the first time with something that felt like intention. "You are not being hunted." A pause. "You are being removed." My stomach dropped. "By whom?" He kept his eyes on me, but there was no humanity in them, not anymore. "Belial does not attack with presence." Another pause, longer, heavier. "He attacks with absence." I tried to answer, but no word came, and for the first time, I was no longer sure it was still me trying. I spent the night at the monastery, or at least, I think I did. Time there no longer behaved the way it should. Hours felt like minutes. Minutes felt like non-existent things. When I woke up, I didn't remember having slept. I only remembered having stopped. The room they put me in was simple. Bed, table, a cross on the wall. Nothing out of the ordinary. But that was exactly what caught my attention. Because for the first time since all of this began, something seemed normal. I got up slowly, looked at the cross. It was crooked, not fallen, not broken, just turned slightly toward the wall, as if it had been repositioned, not to see. I moved closer, touched it, and felt an immediate cold, not on my skin, inside. I straightened the cross, held it for a few seconds, then let go. It didn't fall, it didn't move, but I had the clear feeling that it didn't like that. I stepped back, picked up the Bible that was on the table, opened it, Psalm 23. I knew that text. I had read it before, but when my eyes passed over the words, they were no longer right. The letters were there. Organized, but they formed nothing. It was like looking at a language I had never learned, using a language I was supposed to understand. I ran my hand over the pages, closed it, opened it again. Now the words were different. Some were missing, others were wrong. Not grammatically, wrong as a concept. Even though I walked through the valley, the sentence stopped there. The rest did not exist. My chest tightened. It wasn't fear. It was the perception that something was being erased in real time. I tried one last thing. I picked up my phone, opened the recorder, took a deep breath, and started reading out loud. Our Father, who art. My voice came out normally. For 2 seconds. After that, only static. I looked at the screen. The audio was still being recorded, but the sound graph was a straight line, as if I were producing nothing. I kept speaking. I could feel my voice, feel the air leaving, feel the vibration in my throat, but on the phone, it didn't exist. I stopped, played it back. Nothing. No silence, no noise, no failure, nothing. That was when I understood the next stage. It was no longer only inside me. The world around me was beginning to agree that what I was saying did not need to exist. I stood up slowly, looked at the cross again. It was turned toward the wall once more, and I hadn't seen when that happened. I spent the rest of the day trying to find anything, any sign that this still had limits, but what I found was the opposite. Nothing happened, and that was the problem. I was waiting for a manifestation, a form, a presence, something I could point to and say, that's it. But Belial did not do that. He did not appear. He did not reveal himself. He simply took. I left the room, walked through the monastery corridor, and for a few seconds, I had the feeling that I was alone. Not because there was no one there, but because no one reacted. I passed by 2 monks. They were talking, or at least, it looked like they were. Their lips moved, but there was no sound. When I walked between them, neither one looked away. Neither one reacted to my presence. It was as if I had passed through a space where I was not registered. I kept walking, faster now. At the end of the corridor, there was a door. I remembered that door. I had passed by it the day before. It led to the inner courtyard. I opened it. Nothing. There was no courtyard, no light, no space, only emptiness. Not darkness, not absence of light. It was worse. It was the absence of existence. I shut it immediately, breathing fast, heart pounding too loudly. I leaned against the wall, closed my eyes. Calm down, I thought. This is perception. It's psychological. I opened my eyes. The wall behind me was no longer there. I stepped backward, almost fell. The space had changed, not expanded, not reorganized, simply replaced. I went back through the corridor, or tried to, because now it seemed longer, narrower, and different. The doors were not in the same places. The windows no longer existed. And then came the worst part. One of the monks passed by me, facing me, very close. I looked straight at him, waited for any reaction, any sign. Nothing. He crossed the space beside me as if I were air, not invisible, non-existent. My stomach dropped, a feeling I already knew, but now on another level. It wasn't only inside me anymore. The world was beginning to correct my absence. I went back to the room, closed the door, leaned against it, looked at my hands for 1 second. Very short, very wrong. I didn't see them. They didn't disappear. They didn't vanish completely. They simply were not being processed. I blinked. They came back, but the feeling remained. The perception that that was not an error. It was a test, and that, with every failure, something was learning how much of me it still needed to erase. I did not plan to leave the monastery, but something inside me decided before I did. When I noticed, I was already on the road, driving, without remembering exactly when I had picked up the keys or whether I had been the one who decided to leave. The city looked normal. More normal than the monastery. Cars passing by, people walking, sounds existing. For a few minutes, I almost managed to believe that all of that had been an isolated episode, a collapse, something that had been left behind, until I saw him, on the other side of the street, walking. It was me, not similar, not resembling, not almost. It was exactly me. Same height, same body, same clothes, same way of walking, slightly hunched, left hand in pocket, eyes lowered. I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk. The world kept going. No one reacted. No one noticed. He crossed the street, passed by a group of people. A woman moved aside to give him space. A man bumped into him lightly and apologized. They interacted with him, not with me. My heart began to race in the wrong way. It wasn't just fear, it was displacement. I raised my hand, instinctively, as if that would help me confirm something. "Hey!" My voice came out low, weak, but it came out. He did not react. I took a step forward. "Hey!" Louder now, nothing. He kept walking, natural, integrated, present, as if he were the correct one, and I was not. He crossed the street, stopped in front of a storefront window, looked at the reflection, and then adjusted his posture, exactly the way I do. A small gesture, automatic. My stomach turned, because that was not a copy. That was learning to be me, and, worse still, it seemed to be succeeding. I started to run, without thinking, without planning. I crossed the street without looking. I was almost hit by a car, or maybe not. I'm not sure whether the driver braked because of me. I got close, very close, reached out my hand, almost touched his shoulder, and at that moment, he turned his face. His eyes passed over me, without stopping, without hesitation, without recognition. It was like looking into a mirror. That does not reflect you. He saw me, but he did not register me, and then he kept walking, disappearing into the crowd, not vanishing, being absorbed, and for the first time since all of this began, I understood what the monk meant. I was not being erased, I was being replaced, and that version was already more ready than I was. Guys, that storefront scene is enough to take your breath away. Imagine the feeling of seeing a copy of yourself, learning how to be you. If you're enjoying this heavy atmosphere, don't forget to check if your like is there. It helps our channel so much keep bringing these unique accounts to you. I did not go back to the monastery, not after what I saw. If that was already there, then there was no safe place anymore. I went home, or at least to the place where I was still recognized as someone. The first thing I did was look for a Bible, not out of faith, but as a test. If any connection still existed, any trace at all, that should react. I found an old one, stored at the back of a drawer, worn cover, yellowed pages. I sat at the table, took a deep breath, and opened it. The exact moment my fingers touched the pages, I felt it, not heat, pressure, as if something inside me had been compressed all at once. My chest locked up, my breathing failed for a second, and an absurd sensation took over my body, as if what I was holding were not allowed. I looked at the text, and For the first time since all of this began, the words were there, legible, clear, complete. For 1 second, I felt relief. Maybe it still works. I ran my finger over the page, slowly, as if touching it would confirm that it was still real. And then it started. The letters came loose. They didn't tear. They didn't burn. They simply lost their shape. They began to come apart, like dust. First one word, then another, then entire lines. The sentences disappeared beneath my fingers, turning into a fine, dark powder that did not fall. It only spread across the page, as if it were being absorbed by something invisible. I pulled my hand away immediately, but it was already too late. The page was empty, not erased, not blank, empty of meaning. I turned another page. The same thing happened, faster now. The words did not withstand contact. It was as if my presence were corrupting the text. Or worse, as if the text were being removed so it would not come into contact with me. The temperature dropped, abruptly, not in the room, inside me. A dry, deep cold that did not come from the skin. It came from within. I slowly lifted my eyes and felt it. Not a presence around me, but an observation, internal, as if something were looking from inside my own consciousness, evaluating, measuring, calculating. My hands began to shake. The Bible was still open in front of me, now completely illegible. And it was at that moment that the most disturbing idea arose, not as a thought, but as certainty. That thing was not destroying the sacred. It was removing the sacred from any place where I still existed to make sure that when nothing remained, there would be no way back. I went back to the monastery, not out of hope, but because I needed an answer that did not depend on me. If this had happened before, someone had recorded it. Someone had seen it through to the end. The place was even emptier. Or maybe I was even less present. This time, no one stopped me. No one looked at me. No one even reacted. It was like crossing through a space where I was no longer part of the structure. I went straight to Hartman's old office. I remembered the door, or thought I did. It was not in the right place. I went down the corridor twice, 3 times. On the 4th attempt, it appeared. It did not emerge. I simply began to see it. I opened it. The smell came first. Old paper, dampness, time. But there was something else. A feeling that that place still resisted. I closed the door behind me, locked it, without knowing exactly why. I started searching. Drawers, shelves, boxes, until I found it. A folder. No name, no identification. Inside, letters. Handwritten, some dated from decades ago, others with no date at all. I sat down and started reading. The first case, a man, name partially illegible, initial report, mild forgetfulness, loss of focus, interruption of thought. I kept going, difficulty praying, sensation of spiritual blockage. My breathing became shorter, more pages. Alterations in perception. People cease to recognize him. Objects lose consistency. My hands began to shake. I had already seen this. I was living this. But what came next was worse. Patient reports seeing his own version engaged in normal, independent activity. I stopped. The paper felt heavier, as if that had already been waiting for me. I continued. Progressive loss of physical registration. Photographs do not capture image. Audio does not register voice. My heart started racing. Another page. The handwriting had changed. More pressed down. More urgent. Final stage. Intermittent absence in reflection. Sensation of complete hollowing out. Silence. And then, the last note. Different from all the others. Written with more force. Almost tearing through the paper. Belial does not enter. A pause, another line. He removes. Another. He does not take. And the last sentence, the shortest one, the clearest one. He erases until there is no one left occupying the place. I closed my eyes for a few seconds, or perhaps longer. When I opened them, something inside me was no longer there. Not a memory, not a thought, something deeper, something I could not name, because perhaps the name had also been taken. I got up slowly, and that was when I noticed something else. The folder was lighter. I looked inside. Some pages were no longer there, and I did not remember which ones. After the files, I understood one thing with absolute clarity. There was no ritual. There was no correct prayer. There was no sequence of words. There was no hidden name that would solve it. Because that was not an entity that needed to be expelled. It was something that was already occupying. Even so, I tried, not out of logic, out of instinct. If anything still remained in me, I needed to use it. I went back home, locked everything, turned off the lights, sat on the living room floor, took a deep breath, and tried to make the sign of the cross. My hand did not move. The command existed. The intention was there, but the body did not respond. I looked at my arm, tried again. Nothing. It was as if that action were no longer available to me. My chest started to tighten. It wasn't fear. It was the perception of a limit. I was not being prevented. I simply no longer had access. I got up with effort, walked to the mirror, braced my hands on the sink, breathed, and tried something else. I spoke. "In the name of..." The sentence died. It did not jam. It disappeared, as if it had never been started. I looked at my reflection. For a second, it was not there. I blinked. It came back, but not synchronized. My head moved first. The reflection, afterward. A tiny delay, but impossible. I stepped back immediately. My heart raced, and then I noticed. I looked at the floor. My shadow was not with me. It was behind, late, following, as if it were learning the timing. I took one step. It lagged. Another. It corrected. One more. It came closer, not like a shadow, like something trying to keep up. My breathing failed, because that confirmed what I most feared. I was not fighting something that wanted to enter. I was being replaced by something that was learning to imitate me, and every attempt to react, every attempt to resist, only showed it what it still needed to copy. I leaned against the wall, closed my eyes, and, for the first time, I considered doing nothing anymore, because maybe any action of mine was accelerating the process. The first sign was not the mirror. It was a photograph. I was not trying to prove anything in that moment. It was almost automatic. I picked up the phone, opened the camera, pointed it at myself. Click. I looked at the image. The room was there, the table, the chair, the light, but me, no, I was not blurred. I was not distorted. I simply was not there. I blinked a few times, looked again, nothing. The image was perfect, except for the only thing that was supposed to be at the center. Me. I took another one, and another, and another. Same result. My breathing began to fail, not from fear. From confirmation, this was no longer perception, it was record. I stood up immediately, went to the mirror, there. I was still there, for now. I stared fixedly, without blinking, trying to find any flaw. And then, it happened. For 1 second, too short to ignore, too long to deny. My reflection did not appear. It did not disappear afterward. It simply did not emerge. It was like looking into an empty mirror. I blinked. It came back, but that second remained, and it was enough. I ran back to the phone, opened the recorder. "My name is Daniel." Nothing. I looked at the screen. The audio was being recorded, the time running, but the graph did not move. Straight line, no sound. I kept talking, louder now, desperate. If anyone finds this? Nothing. No static. No failure. Only absence. I deleted it. Recorded again and again and again. Always the same. That was when I understood the next stage. It was not just image. It was not just reflection. It was recorded existence. The world was no longer recognizing me as something that needed to be preserved. I sat down on the floor. Slowly, my mind began to feel lighter, not calm, empty, and, for the first time, I felt fear of something specific, not of dying, but of continuing to be there, while everything that proved me as real simply stopped working. I looked at my hands. They were still there. But for how long? And, more importantly, when they vanished. Would anyone notice? Things are getting truly trapped now. The world is simply stopping registering his existence. Have you ever had that strange feeling of being invisible somewhere? Hang in there, because we're getting to the final ending of this saga. I don't know why he could still see me. Maybe because he was already too close to the end. The priest was lying down, short breath, sunken eyes, skin so thin it seemed unable to hold anything inside anymore. The room smelled of medicine and time. When I entered, he turned his face directly toward me, without hesitation. He saw me, and that should no longer have been possible. I approached slowly, without knowing exactly what to say. "You can still see me?" I asked. He took a few seconds to answer, as if the answer itself had weight. "I can, because you are no longer whole." I felt that more than I heard it. "I'm disappearing," I said, not as a question, as a statement. He closed his eyes for a moment. "No." A pause. "You are already being replaced." Silence. The monitor beside him beeped softly. Irregular rhythm. "Belial?" I asked. He nodded. Very little, almost imperceptibly. "In the ancient texts," he began, his voice failing between one word and the next. "He is not described as the one who possesses?" He took a deep breath, with difficulty. "He is. The one who separates." I looked at him, waiting for more. "He separates man from God, separates man from himself, separates man from existence itself." My throat dried out. "Why me?" I asked. He did not answer immediately. He looked at the ceiling, as if that no longer mattered. "Because you opened doors!" The sentence came simply, without weight, without judgment. But it was enough. "And now?" I asked. He turned his face toward me again. His eyes were different, no longer the eyes of someone trying to understand, but of someone who already knew the ending. "Now, you're between." My chest tightened. "Between what?" He took longer than before. Each second seemed to slip. "Between existing and being forgotten." The monitor failed for a moment, came back. "How much time do I have?" I asked. He did not answer. He only looked at me, and, for the first time, I saw something there. Not fear, but recognition, as if he had seen that before, many times. And then he said the last thing, low, almost without air. "You're already past halfway." Silence. The monitor beeped faster, then slower, and then stopped. I remained there, standing still, looking at someone who, until seconds earlier, could still see me, and now saw nothing anymore. I had no more options. There was nowhere else to go. There was no one else to ask. There was nothing else that could be done. Only one thing remained: to record. If I still existed, I needed to leave proof. I picked up the phone, adjusted the camera, set it on the table, sat in front of it, took a deep breath, looked straight into the lens. "If anyone finds this," my voice came out, weak, but it came out. "My name is Daniel." The image failed. It didn't blink. It didn't cut. It oscillated, as if I were in two places at the same time. I looked at the screen. I was there, and I wasn't. My silhouette appeared and disappeared at irregular intervals. It wasn't transparency. It was inconsistency. I continued. I don't know how much time. My voice lagged. The mouth moved first. The sound came afterward. Out of sync. Wrong. I felt the air grow heavier, not in the room, inside me, as if something were blaming too much space. I looked at my hands. They started to fail. First the fingers. I blinked. They vanished. I blinked. They came back, but not in the same place. Slightly displaced, like a badly rendered image. My breathing locked. If you're seeing this, the sentence came out, but not all of it. The words began to disappear in the middle. Don't answer. Silence. I knew what I wanted to say, but I could no longer access it. The idea was there, but the path was not. I looked at the camera, tried to focus, but something inside me was getting stronger, more present, more organized. My vision darkened for a second, and when it came back, I saw, not in the room, inside me, something without form, without face, without presence, but occupying, aligning, replacing. My mouth moved again, but this time, it wasn't me. It's no use, the voice came out, but there was another underneath it, deeper, more stable, without emotion. You already left. My heart raced, or at least tried to. I looked at the screen. My image began to fail faster. Pieces of me vanished, returned, vanished again, until it stopped. There was no cut, there was no effect, there was no sound. I simply was no longer there. The channel stayed still for 3 days. No new videos, no activity, no comments answered, nothing. To those who followed it, it just looked like another silence, another creator who disappeared. But then, on the 4th day, a new file appeared. No announcement, no clickbait title, no thumbnail, only a simple name, final.log.mpo4. No one could say who uploaded it. The upload had no registered origin. There was no IP, there was no device, it just was there. The video lasted exactly 12 seconds. No image at the beginning, black screen, and a sound. Low, constant, a heartbeat, slow, regular, like a heart. At second 4, something changed, not the image, the sound. A second rhythm began underneath, slightly out of sync, like 2 hearts, beating in the same space. At second 7, the screen glitched for a single frame, and in that instant, something appeared. Not a face, not a body, a form impossible to describe, like an error trying to look human. At second 9, the voice began. First, his, recognizable, weak, fragmented. The word barely holds itself up, and then the other voice enters, underneath, more firm, more stable, perfect. He does not need to be seen. The two voices speak together now, overlapping, but not the same. One fails, one is complete. He only needs... Daniel's voice fails, the other continues. For you to forget who you are. Silence. At second 12, the heartbeat stops. The screen remains black, and the video ends. No credits, no explanation, no conclusion. Hours later, the file disappeared, without warning, without error, without record, as if it had never existed. But some people claim they still remember, not the whole video. Only one thing, a feeling, strange, unexplainable, as if for a few seconds they had forgotten who they were. And that is Daniel's story, or what remained of him. Sinister, right guys? But now I want to open the microphone to you. What did you think of that ending? Leave your comment down below. We read absolutely everything and love this exchange with you. And tell me too, where are you watching this video from? I really want to know your country, state, and city to see how far these accounts of ours are echoing. And if you have any suggestion for a real horror story or something strange that happened to you or someone you know, send it to us. Who knows? Maybe your account will become the next video here on the channel. Before you go, don't forget to take a look at the other videos appearing there on the screen. Every story here on the channel is unique, with its own atmosphere and edited with great care so that you can feel every detail of the account. Thank you for everything, guys, and we'll see each other in the next video, if Belial allows it.